We'll get the right agenda. All right. Hello, everyone. The commission took a brief break so that the members could get their lunch and then come back to the dais. I'm going to have to make a change to the order in the agenda, in part because commissioners have travel arrangements that they have to observe. And normally, we would start with public comment during the business meeting, which is what we're doing presently. But instead, in order to ensure that we have the maximum number of commissioners present, I'd like to move item number 4, which is the commission elections, up so we can take that now. Under our rules, the rules call for election of officers in person in Sacramento in March of each year. And so I apologize to those who are waiting for public comment, but this is something that I think we need to take up. And after we take up the elections, then we'll move to public comment on the regular agenda. Let me turn this over to you, Ethan.
In that case, Mr. Chairman, we will go to item 4, and 4A is the election of the chair.
Open for nominations.
I'll nominate Pedro to continue to serve as president and chair.
There's a motion and a second. Thank you. Any further nominations?
Acclamation.
Seeing no further nominations, call the roll, please.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Mr. Vice Chair? Commissioner Arner? Commissioner Byer? Assemblymember Chen? Commissioner Garcetti? Commissioner Hernandez? Commissioner Johnson? Senator Min? Assemblymember Ortega? Commissioner Sidley?
Yep.
And Senator Wilk. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. The motion passes.
Well, thank you. Again, I appreciate your confidence in my work with you as chair, especially since it may very well be this is my last year.
Oh.
Yeah, my appointment, this particular appointment expires at the end of 2024. So thank you again for your trust and your confidence. Next, we have the election of vice chair. Nominations are open. What? Commissioner Sidley has raised her hand.
I'll nominate Anthony Cannella to continue to serve as the vice chair.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Any other nominations? Hearing none. Roll, please.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Mr. Vice Chairman? Commissioner Arner? Commissioner Byer? Assemblymember Chen? Commissioner Garcetti?
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez? Commissioner Johnson? Senator Min? Assemblymember Ortega? Commissioner Sidley?
Yep.
And Senator Wilk. And that motion passes as well, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair, do you have any comments?
Thank you very much. I'm very concerned about the end of this year. So
Thank you, commissioners, much appreciated. Let's go back now to the prior order of our agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we will begin with public comment in the room, and then we will take public comment from anyone who is online. If you are online, and I'll ask the staff to put up the instructions on Zoom, but if you are online and you joined by Zoom, please use the raised hand function to indicate you wish to make public comment. If you have phoned into the meeting, email us immediately at littlehoover@lhc.ca.gov. Give us your phone number so we know who to unmute when you are called on. But it's much preferable that you use the raised hand function if you can. And public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker, as it normally is at commission meetings. And we will start with people in the room, although I believe, Mr. Chairman, that Commissioner Sidley is trying to recognize.
I just want to clarify that this is public comment on any of the items on our agenda. This is not limited
Correct.
to what we just heard for insurance.
Correct.
I just
correct.
wanted to make that clarification.
Correct. Members of the public can make public comment on any item at any time, and this is the time to make public comment on any item on the agenda. Thank you for that clarification. So we'll begin with people in the room. Again, you're limited to 3 minutes, please. And people in the room can use the podium right behind me. The first person to request public comment this morning was Rex Bone. Mr. Bone.
Welcome.
Thank you. Was that 3 minutes on each item or 3 minutes combined? Just point of clarification.
3
Okay.
minutes total, yeah.
I'm only commenting on one. I have people ask that all the time. Thank you. Hi, I'm Rex Bone, County Supervisor from Humboldt County. 80% of our public forests lie in rural lands. I'm part of, I'm a rural county. We're about 6 million plus acres. 80% of it is public lands. They're a terrible neighbor to have for fires because that's where a majority of the fires come from. But with that being said, there's a couple things we need to do with 1,400 people at the Office of Insurance. It should take about 5% of them and put a mitigation plan together in case we have an insurance catastrophe and how are we going to deal with that? Because that looks like we're headed, because I really have never been more confused. I thought I had this all understood until I heard the last 4 speakers. And they pointed their fingers at each other and nobody would take blame. And the problem is somebody's going to have to take some of these efforts. Some of the problem is we're in California, twice the building costs of Texas and Florida. Keep that in mind. That's a lot why insurance companies don't want to do here, because the replacement costs. They'll give a value. They'll insure you for $300,000. They don't want to insure you for a replacement cost. Fair plan. As we all heard, it's not. And then you have to buy another plan to go with it. And there was a lot of talk about the earthquake. Humboldt County is known for fires, floods, and earthquakes. We had 3 people in our whole county that had earthquake insurance. We have 138,000 people. So it seems to me it's not a very good plan because they're not flocking to it. And if they're planning on making money off Humboldt County, they're not. We need more opportunities to support vulnerable homeowners. Hardening is the main thing. Reward people. You keep saying this, and we keep saying they drone it and everything else. We're at a point now where we can, 20 miles high, we can get a license plate. So we can start spotting these houses. And with AI and with this technology, you don't need somebody doing it. They can tell you if the house is a problem or not. But we should reward the people that are putting the effort forward somehow. Make them send in a video, make them send in something that they've done these things. But we're going to have to do it. We've talked about it for 20 years now, but now it's got to a critical point. People, I had an 80-year-old woman call me the other day. She is about to lose her house. She picked up 3 more Tai Chi classes. She's teaching 8 Tai Chi classes a week so she can stay in her house. So as Gil might be taking one of them because she would be the next oldest person in the room if she was here. So what I'm saying is we need to find some answers to do this. This is getting to be, rural counties we always get the brunt of it. We're getting the brunt of it now. And we don't, was that 3?
Yes, if you can wrap up quickly, please.
Anyway, I appreciate the time. I've got to drive back to Humboldt County and catch my grandson's first Little League game tonight. But I appreciate you taking a quick lunch and bringing it back to take this. But there's some tough things. But the Office of Insurance has to step up and figure out a way, because we're getting to the insurance cliff. So I appreciate your time, efforts, and you guys decipher what the last 4 people said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bone. Next, we have, and I am no doubt mispronouncing the name, my apologies, John Amodio, I believe. Am I close?
You were close. I've heard it worse. So
Okay, please go ahead, sir.
So yes, my name's John Amadeo, and I serve on the leadership team of the Yosemite Stanislaus Solutions, community-based collaborative of over 30 diverse entities working together in achieving wildfire resilient forests. We are definitely on the cutting edge of the problem.
Could you
I believe,
pull the microphone down so we can?
and I believe we are on the cutting edge of the solution. The original mega fire, the 250,000 acre rim fire in 2013 occurred in our area. We have a decade of learning as to what is needed to succeed in restoring wildfire resilience, which is the most economical way to addressing our current insurance crisis. Here are lessons that we have learned relevant to the insurance crisis caused again primarily by megafires. The science is clear that megafires will grow in frequency and in destructiveness unless we invest as soon as possible in the proven treatments that reduce wildfire intensity and magnitude. Research scientists now foresee the worst of our wildfire years up till now will become more like the norm without such investments as soon as 2030. Current combination of decreasing availability of private insurance and increasing of reliability on the FAIR plan is a prescription for undermining the basic viability of communities, not only at the rural level, but over time, the majority of California increasingly susceptible to megafires. Megafires have already caused staggering destruction in population areas long considered safe from wildfires. Current focus seems to address mostly on one half of the needed solution, how to build sufficient reserves to pay off increasing losses. Yet the findings of research scientists and economic experts document that the only path to reducing overall wildfire impacts, including on homeowners insurance, is making the needed long-term investments to reduce intensity and magnitude of future wildfires. This includes wildfires in California's vast chaparral areas, such as the Inland Empire, where Santa Ana winds pose potentially the greatest potential wildfire loss to property and lives. As it took 100 years to create this crisis, it will require dedicated multi-year funding to reverse this. Our current boom and bust state funding is a guaranteed path to failure. Therefore, please include the need for California to make the essential dedicated multi-year investments in reducing future wildfire risk. Otherwise, we are only delaying a cascade of catastrophes that collapsing homeowner insurance would achieve. Of course, the key question is, then who pays for these needed investments? The truth is that everyone will need to pay. The challenge is to establish an integrated package of equitable funding sources. While no one, such as the insurance industry, should disproportionately contribute, everyone, including them, need to be part of any viable solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Amadeo. Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to make public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to people who've raised their hands online, wish to make public comment. Shara, if you can identify the first speaker.
Yes, the first speaker is going to be Janice Parvin. Janice, you now have the ability to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Chair Nava and Commissioners. I'm Janice Parvin, Ventura County Supervisor. I have been receiving calls from residents in our county that will be losing homeowners insurance on July 3rd. It has been reported that the State Insurance Commissioner, Lara, is working on an insurance strategy or regulations that have not been updated in over 30 years. How possible is it to expedite changes and getting them approved by the state prior to the July 3rd deadline? That is the deadline for 72,000 properties statewide insured by State Farm alone. And we're really running out of time. It's a serious concern here in Ventura County, and I'm sure it's a serious concern to every homeowner in California. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public comment will be from Dore Bietz. Dore Bietz, you now have the ability to unmute yourself.
Ma'am, if you can go ahead. Is she unmuted, Shara?
I'm going to go ahead and ask to unmute.
Is she muted on her end?
Yeah.
Ma'am, you're Dory Bits, I guess it is. You are muted on your end. If you can unmute, please, and begin your comment. You can please unmute. If not, I think, Shara, we can go on to the next speaker.
Okay. Okay, our next speaker is going to be Ann Cottrell. Ann Cottrell, you now have the ability to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yes.
Great, thank you. My name is Ann Cottrell and I am a Napa County Supervisor. Great.
Oh, I'm sorry, one moment. That was me, my apologies. Ann, please continue.
Ms. Cottrell, I'm so sorry. We briefly muted you, but go ahead and begin again, please.
Great, I'll take a second chance. Thank you. My name is Ann Cottrell and I'm a Napa County Supervisor. I wanted to say thanks to Supervisors Bone and Parvin for their comments as well, and to the Commission for addressing this critical issue. And I wanted to thank Amy Bach at UP. She and her team have been very helpful to our community in providing really practical solutions for residents seeking insurance, working with insurers and hardening their homes. As a county supervisor, we've faced really high wildfire risks and seen draconian impacts. And we've already implemented many community wildfire protection projects, including defensible space, fuel mitigation, roadside clearance, dozer lines, and many more. And now is the time for the insurance companies to catch up with all we've done working together. So I'm asking you to hear that we really need premium reductions and credits for the actual on the ground risk reduction work that has been done. On a positive note, I would share that we've seen one community who's received certification as a fire safe community see some discounts in their rates. So I'm thankful that the insurers have been responsive. And my final point is a vote for transparency. One of the commissioners mentioned the black box of rate setting and underwriting processes. And while catastrophic models make sense in this age of climate change, we really need, as a public, more insight into how those models are being used and the underwriting process in general. So thank you for hearing my comments and that vote of transparency.
Thank you. Our next speaker is going to be Chris Gallagher. Chris Gallagher, you now have the ability to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Commissioner, and the other guests that have been online today. I'm Chris Gallagher. I'm a Lassen County Supervisor, and I appreciate the input that the 3 other rural county supervisors have put in on this particular webinar. We get constantly asked, I guess, in our county about why people are being canceled on their insurance over and over again. I can tell you personally, I have 2 properties in Lassen County. I've been canceled 5 times, and I have the FAIR plan now. And I don't know if you know, but there's a number of retired folks that have had to cash in their entire savings in order to pay off their house, their home, because they had mortgages and needed to have insurance with their mortgage. And now they have no savings, but they don't have to pay insurance for fire. So this is a really critical issue. And I would love to have in one of your parts, upcoming parts of this discussion, to have counties be able to come and give some presentation as well, because I think there are issues that are being missed. You know, we had the Dixie Fire here in 2021. We lost all of our timber industry in Lassen County probably 20 years ago, and I think the timber industry ought to be involved in this conversation as well. So I appreciate the commission taking on this topic. We've been trying to get a hold of Commissioner Lara and have him come and talk with us, and that's been a failed effort. It's just unfortunate that one of our representatives in the state will not come and talk to their county representatives. So again, I thank you. I hope you will invite county supervisors to come and speak in the future at a longer period of time than 3 minutes and discuss some of the issues that we're having in our counties. So thank you once again.
Thank you. Our next speaker is going to be J.P. Rose. JP Rose, you now have the ability to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is JP Rose, and I'm the Policy Director in the Urban Wildlands Program at the Center for Biological Diversity. Today, I'm asking you that you postpone finalization of the Commission's draft study on the California Environmental Quality Act for 60 days. Postponement will allow the public an opportunity to carefully review the draft and provide comments, and allow the Commission time to review and consider them at a future meeting. Upon initial review, it appears that there are some recommendations in the draft report that could have troubling implications for CEQA and for the ability of communities to engage in the land use decision-making process. If we really want to find solutions to the affordable housing crisis, we should focus on the real causes such as real estate speculation, inequitable zoning, and unregulated short-term rentals. An equitable and climate-resilient future for all communities requires a stronger CEQA. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is going to be Christina Caro. Christina Caro, you now have the ability to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Nava and Commission members. My name is Christina Caro. I am speaking on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council of California. I am commenting on business item number 3, which is the Commission's proposed consideration of the draft report on CEQA. The state building trades represents nearly 500,000 working men and women, including many members and apprentices from underrepresented communities who rely on the CEQA process to protect their communities, their own personal health, and the health and environment of their cities. We participated extensively in the 2023 process the Commission held on considering the effects of CEQA. We submitted comments which identified major flaws and a lack of evidentiary support for several of the CEQA topics that were addressed in the report. We reviewed the draft report that was provided just 2 days ago to the public and asked that the Commission continue this hearing in order to allow the public time to consider and weigh in on the draft, and also to make substantial revisions to the report. Some of the issues that were raised by both state building trades and many other members of the public included initial proposals for limiting standing based on motives rather than the public interest, which is inconsistent with California law and the Constitution. Unsupported testimony from developer advocates that CEQA is a factor in the state's housing crisis, when in fact, substantial public evidence demonstrates that CEQA is not a barrier to housing. We also urge the Commission not to recommend any changes to CEQA that would jeopardize its environmental and public health protections or restrict the rights of the public. Unfortunately, the draft report does exactly the opposite. The report includes recommendations aimed at curtailing public participation by limiting standing and by prohibiting public comment outside of the CEQA public comment period. This would infringe on fundamental rights of free speech and association under the Constitution, and would create legal violations that would have to be resolved with additional litigation by preventing members of the public from submitting evidence to agencies in order to exhaust administrative remedies. The report also proposes unsupported exemptions and fails to consider several of the key proposals that were made to strengthen CEQA, such as recognizing environmental justice and identifying human beings as part of the environment. So the state building trades would like to urge the Commission to continue this hearing and also to please revise the report to remove the improper recommendations and blanket CEQA exemptions, and to refocus it on recommendations that preserve CEQA's substantive and procedural mandates that would best fulfill the purpose of this proceeding, which the Commission is charged with, which is to consider how to best ensure that any changes to CEQA preserve environmental protections and public accountability. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is going to be Michelle Bushnell. Michelle Bushnell, You now have the ability to unmute yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. I want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Michelle Bushnell. I'm a Humboldt County Supervisor. I want to say thank you to my fellow Supervisor Rex Bone, who was in the room, and then also to the supervisor comments that have happened previous. I'm speaking about the insurance, fire insurance. And I just want to say, you know,
Michelle, we can no longer hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
Bushnell, I believe you muted yourself, perhaps? We did not mute her, correct? Ms. Bushnell? If you can unmute yourself, we can no longer hear you. Okay, Ms. Bushnell, I tell you what, we'll move on to the next speaker, and then Ms. Bushnell, if you can unmute yourself, you can always raise your hand again and get back in line, I suppose, and we can continue with your comment. But in the meantime, so as to save time, let's go on to the next speaker, Sharon.
Okay, our next speaker is going to be Doug Karstens. Doug Karstens, you now have the ability to unmute yourself. Doug Karstens.
Thank you. This is Doug Karstens. I want to check if you can hear me, please.
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you and good afternoon, Honorable Commission. My name is Douglas Karstens. I am an attorney with Karstens, Black and Mentir. I would like to provide comments regarding item 3, the proposed changes to the California Environmental Quality Act, which is California's premier environmental law, a Bill of Rights for environmental democracy. I had the honor and the privilege of being a panelist before this commission on April 13th, 2023 to provide comments about the proposed changes and really appreciate the hard work and thought, both of the commission and your staff. Very excellent work to staff and yourselves. I have to commend that. I'd like to note we submitted subsequent letters, myself and the Center for Biological Diversity's Aruna Pravala, on October 27th, 2023, and also on December 21st, 2023. I understand from staff that one was received, the other one was received more recently, but at least both can be considered. And as you consider changes to the California Environmental Quality Act, first of all, I would join the comments of the Center for Biological Diversity and the state building trades requesting that this commission give another 60 days for the public to weigh in. Realizing that that may not occur, I'd like to note a couple of things. First, the framework for evaluating any changes that we would encourage, strongly encourage, is remembering the purposes of CEQA are public participation and environmental protection. Anything that you do, any recommendations you follow are either going to improve public participation in environmental protection, or they are going to detract and destroy those values. What you have in a couple of the recommendations are things that will detract and erode public participation and environmental protection. Specifically, 2 recommendations. One of them is for creating standing requirements that are similar to the federal government's zone of interest requirements. This is an idea that was considered and rejected by the California Supreme Court in a case called Save the Plastic Bag Coalition. I sent a citation to it to staff. A quote from that case said, "There are sound reasons to be cautious borrowing federal standing concepts born of perceived constitutional necessity and extending them to state court actions where no similar concerns apply." That's a reference to federal Article 3 standing, which does not apply in California. Restricting standing is just locking people out of the processes and public participation. I encourage you not to do that. The other comment we have is about the what you and staff refer to as late hit. It's not hits. Public comments are concerns of the public. I call them 11th hour comments. They're not data dumps. These are comments from members of the public who may have only received notice very.
Mr. Karstens, if you can wrap up fairly quickly, your 3 minutes has expired. So if you can wrap up quickly, please.
Thank you. I just appreciate your time and consideration. We've submitted this in writing and thank you for your careful work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Michelle Bushnell. Michelle, you should have the ability to unmute yourself.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
I am so sorry. I don't know where I got cut off at. I wanted to thank my fellow supervisor Rex Bone, who is in the room. My name is Michelle Bushnell. I'm Humboldt County Supervisor. I think that you heard some of what I said. I also would like to thank the supervisors in other counties. I'm talking about the wildfire insurance issue. And I just would like to leave with a couple thoughts on how can county government be helpful? There is a lot at stake, and we know the commission knows this is important to us, but what can we do to help? Also, when does the commissioner expect to release the next round of insurance rate plans, including the safe from wildfire discounts? Does the commissioner have the authority to structure how the insurance companies work with safer from wildfire programs? It is all something or nothing. Some of these ideas are easier to implement, others are not. Can the commissioner direct the insurers to approach it as an additive process where credit is given for what is achieved? Also, just want to say, you know, in my county and other counties, it's a really sad state when retired folks have their homes paid for yet can't afford the California Fair Plan, and so they're choosing to have no insurance. Should fire consume their home, this retired population will be end up homeless in many counties, and it's more prevalent than you would think. The amount of people that are not able to afford the California Fair Plan, and also insurance companies in the middle of a town with cement entirely around a home are using a decorative tree in the back of their homes to cancel insurance. And so I would just really echo what already has been said by county supervisors and by my fellow supervisor Rex Bone. Thank you, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Our next speaker is going to be Emma. That's first name only, and it's Emma. You now have the ability to unmute yourself. Looking for Emma.
Hi. No, thank you for letting me have this opportunity to speak. Thank you, Commission, for bringing this to the attention or bringing this to, you know, our attention to be able to discuss this, because when I reached out to Commissioner Lara's office, they dismissed me. When I reached out to local representatives, they dismissed me. And I own my home. And I was given a notice last July that it would be non-renewal, that the company was no longer doing business in California. When I reached out to other agencies, they were not taking in new applicants. And so I know I don't have insurance on my home. If it burns down, we're homeless. And that shouldn't be the case in California. As far as the FAIR Plan, that won't work for us either. I live in Fresno County. I'm not in the mountains. I'm not in high risk area. I live right near a Fresno City College. So there's no reason why my home should be at risk. There's nothing around here. One of the things for the second insurance was, well, your roof probably needs to be renewed. So if you do that, maybe we'll do that. And so, okay, well, there's $10,000 I don't have. So how am I going to get insurance? There's nothing to help me. And Commissioner Lara's office dismissed me. My local elected representatives dismissed me. So thank you for bringing this to attention. I'm hoping now maybe someone will start doing something. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Dory Bietz. You now have the ability to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And apologies for that earlier. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Dory Bietz, and I serve as the Office of Emergency Services Assistant Director for Tuolumne County. I also have represented rural counties on the California Risk Modeling Work Group, and I serve as the direct staff support to Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors Fire Safety Advisory Committee. Tuolumne County is a forestry and tourism-based small economy located in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. And like many rural and most counties, is concerned with reducing loss of life and property from catastrophic fires. Most of Tuolumne County is located within the very high fire severity zone, and we know very well the impact it has had on our community and in the increased insurance premiums. It is not uncommon for residents of our county to receive non-renewal notices for insurance providers or to see our insurance premiums triple in cost. In fact, Tuolumne County has one, if not the highest number of residents in the state on the FAIR plan. Last year, 30% of homeowners within our county were on the FAIR plan. We are also seeing many homeowners who own their homes outright choosing not to get home insurance because it is simply too expensive. This has led to a large number of residents who have opted out to go bare or to be uninsured. For the retired and elderly, this could be catastrophic and could leave many homeless. New homeowners cannot buy homes because the insurance rate is much too high or unavailable. Many of our homeowners are in a panic and desperate to find a solution. As a county, we have taken great measure and invested millions of dollars in fuels reduction projects, promoting and ensuring that our communities have defensible space, as well as promoting fire-wise communities, which would empower those residents to work together in creating wildfire resiliency throughout our county. Working together to be wildfire resilient should pay off and considered in any modeling. We are also excited about a home hardening pilot project and hope that we can encourage homeowners to invest in decreasing their risks through investment in hardening their homes to reduce ember ignition, all of which should be rewarded through insurance premiums. Our general comments regarding new regulation. CAP models can be used to estimate the value of mitigation features, which can be reflected in insurance prices, inducing homeowners and communities to take actions to reduce the risk to their properties. Factors should not be just historic, structural, or topographic factors or fire history, but the action homeowners do in addition to changing the construction of their home, being a member of a fire-wise community, having defensible space, reducing hazardous vegetation, the work their community has done in fuels reduction alongside roads or within their own property, all of which has proven to reduce risks. Reducing risk should lower the vulnerability component of any CAP model. Wildfire modeling is not without its limitations. While it can provide valuable insights into the future wildfire risk of an area, it is an inexact science. Many variables can impact the accuracy of a wildfire model, including the quality of data input and the complexity of the model itself. Data should be verified and looked at regularly to allow for accurate information.
Ma'am, if
New
you
events.
can wrap up, your
Yep.
3 minutes has expired. If you can
Perfect.
wrap up quickly, please.
Awesome. In closing, we echo comments that communities that invest in reducing wildfire risk should be rewarded, and the work the property owners do to reduce risk on their individual properties should be reflected. On behalf of Tuolumne County, we encourage continued transparency and public outreach to review the availability of homeowners insurance in the state and assess current strategies to regulate the homeowners insurance market and explore additional policy solutions. Tuolumne County is grateful for the opportunity to engage in shaping local perspectives as the state progresses toward enacting insurance reform, and we thank you very much.
Thank you. We have no more public comment.
Thank you very much, Sharon. I'll ask one more time. Any other people in the room wishing to make public comment? If not, I think we can close that agenda item, Mr. Chairman. That technically speaking, the next item on the agenda is the business meeting minutes. I wonder if, given the press of time and the need for commissioners to travel, we should just skip that and take that up at a subsequent meeting?
I think this will take 30 seconds.
Okay, all right. In that case, approval of the business meeting minutes from February 8th.
There's a motion, there's a second. Any discussion, changes? None proposed. Take roll, please.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Mr. Vice Chairman, Commissioner Aaroner, Commissioner Byer, Assembly Member Chen, Commissioner Garcetti,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez, Commissioner Johnson, Senator Min, Assembly Member Ortega, Commissioner Sidley,
Yes.
Senator Wilk. Motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The minutes have been approved. Next item.
So the next item, Mr. Chairman, is consideration of the draft report on the California Environmental Quality Act. I can briefly present the report if that's helpful, Mr. Chairman, and then we can move into comments either from the subcommittee members or just general commission discussion.
Let me just turn to the chair of the subcommittee. What's your preference?
I would defer to the other members. I'm very familiar with the report, having read it numerous times while we drafted it. So, but if people want that review, or if, or you, Chairman, if you think the public should hear the outline, that we could go that route.
Yeah, I think in the interest of public discussion, you have before you, I think, 3 letters from organizations that are requesting a delay. And so I think that what we ought to do is just proceed as we would with a normal business meeting, and that is presentation by staff, and then open it up for commissioner comments.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. And actually, I believe there are 4 letters before the
I'm sorry.
commissioners there.
Thank you.
Requesting a delay. I'll briefly describe the report, Mr. Chairman. To note the framing of the issue, the report notes that CEQA has been a bedrock of environmental protection since it was enacted, and we recount some of the ways in which the law has aided environmental causes. At the same time, we note the critical evaluations of CEQA, including that it is an expensive and lengthy process, that it can be used for purposes that have relatively little relationship to traditional notions of environmental protection, and that it has a bias toward the status quo. We describe in broad brush terms how CEQA functions, and describe briefly the frequency of CEQA litigation. I'll note the numbers there, if I may. On average, there are about 200 CEQA lawsuits filed each year in California. That is about 2% of all projects subject to CEQA review documents. We also note the role of CEQA as a proxy for other issues, especially land use and local control. In other words, often issues that are really debates about those kinds of topics are refracted through the lens of CEQA, but are not necessarily directly CEQA issues. And we review the fairly substantial legislative actions on CEQA in the past few years. And we note that in those areas where there has been recent legislative action, particularly action last summer, last fall, when by the time the governor signed the bills, the commission cautions against immediate or drastic change. However, the draft report does make 6 recommendations, which we call targeted and limited reforms, allowing for beneficial projects to proceed more rapidly without sacrificing necessary environmental protections. Let me run through those 6 recommendations quickly. They are the heart of the report. The first is with regard to standing. CEQA has an unusually broad threshold to establish standing to sue, which can contribute to the use of CEQA for purposes that some people regard as not being directly related to the environment. The report recommends that the state adopt the standing requirement that exists for the National Environmental Protection Act. This is essentially also the same standing requirement that exists for New York State's so-called mini NEPA law. The critical differences are that NEPA requires that the claim fall within the zone of interest of the statute, and it requires a concrete harm by the plaintiff. The second recommendation is regarding what are often called, although Mr. Carstens objects to this phrase, are often called late hits or data dumps. CEQA now allows information to be inserted into the review process at any time prior to the close of the last public hearing, even after the close of the public comment period. This has led to what critics refer to as late hits, in which opponents of a project add substantial information to the record at the last minute. We recommend limiting those submissions to the public comments period, although there would be an exception for information that was not known or could not have been known with reasonable diligence during the public comment period. The third recommendation, excuse me, and I apologize for all the coughing. Everyone in the room should know I've taken numerous COVID tests. I do not have COVID. So the third recommendation deals with infill housing. California, as I think we all know, has a clear need to construct more housing, and especially in the view of many people, infill housing in urban areas, both to provide additional housing and to help the state meet its climate goals. The draft report recommends that the state adopt a broad, simplified exemption for infill housing. In this respect, California would follow Washington State, which recently adopted a similar measure. Specifically, we recommend that for this exemption, infill housing should be understood as housing on sites that are at least 3/4 surrounded by existing urban uses, so as not to promote additional sprawl or allow the exemption to apply to greenfield development. There are already numerous existing exemptions to CEQA, many of them dealing with housing projects, but they are fairly specific. For instance, last year, there was a bill that addressed housing on land owned by private colleges or religious institutions, or another bill on state surplus lands and with the housing intended for formerly incarcerated individuals, so forth. We recommend a broader, more simple exemption. Recommendation number 4, given the complexity of CEQA cases, the draft report recommends that the state provide for additional judicial training. Currently, there are annual 2-day courses offered by the Judicial Council. We recommend that the legislature provide sufficient funds to expand that training to 1 week. Recommendation number 5, existing statutory language states that it is the intent of the legislature that the courts should not interpret CEQA in a way that imposes, quote, procedural or substantive requirements beyond those explicitly stated in the statute or the CEQA guidelines. However, in practice, in the view of many, CEQA has often allowed for substantial judicial interpretation. There's quite a history of case law, and the commission took testimony about this. And so we recommend the legislature reaffirm its intent that courts show substantial deference to statute and CEQA guidelines. Let me note one error, which is entirely mine. On page 34, this recommendation makes reference to the preceding recommendation. It should say the following recommendation. At one point, the subcommittee renumbered the recommendations, and when I shifted them around, I failed to change preceding to following. So my apologies for that error. And the final recommendation is that the state establish clear parameters for significance thresholds, starting with the categories of impact that are most frequently the subject of litigation. As commissioners know, the level of significance for a given impact is the level at which the impact is considered significant, thus requiring mitigation. The lead agency has discretion to set significance thresholds. Examples would be things like air quality thresholds or noise impacts. Under our recommendation, OPR, the Office of Planning and Research, which writes the CEQA guidelines, would establish which categories of impact are subject to the most litigation. These might be, for instance, aesthetics or VMT analysis, for instance, or noise. If existing statute and case law provide the basis for clear thresholds, they could be spelled out in the guidelines. Where statutory changes are needed, the legislature and governor should make those changes under the draft recommendation. I want to say that the recommendation recognizes that this would be an extremely complicated and difficult task, particularly given the state's size and geographic diversity. But we believe that it would provide more predictability and consistency in the application of CEQA. Those are the 6 key recommendations. On several issues, the draft report recommends additional study, but not a specific outcome. These include creation of a specialized CEQA court, the translation of CEQA documents into language other than English, requiring the posting of a bond for CEQA lawsuits, the effects of the adoption of vehicle miles traveled analysis, which in effect shifted the analysis of traffic related to CEQA projects from congestion to emissions, and whether or not analytical models should be locked in for some period of time. Again, on these issues, the draft report takes no particular position other than that they deserve a deep degree of study beyond our current work. I believe that's the very quick summary of the report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And let me turn now to the chair of the subcommittee.
Thank you, Pedro. So first and foremost, I want to thank everybody who participated in this study, all those who testified, all those who wrote in letters, and additionally, we did receive letters just yesterday, regarding the scheduling of the adoption of, or the proposed adoption of this report. As everyone knows who participated and listened, that CEQA is somewhat controversial in California. There are, for as many pages as there are to CEQA, there are that many opinions and more. This commission took more hearings and more testimony than they do on most reports. And I thank them for spending that much time on something that is so important. We also had a draft report memo that came to the full commission to discuss different ideas and get opinions which the public was participating and was part of that discussion. And so we have done our best to make sure that this difficult topic was done with full transparency. And we don't make these recommendations lightly. I will tell you that Dion and I, as the chair and co-chair, had numerous discussions. And I would say that it was beneficial to ultimately the outcome of the report that we did have these discussions. And I thank Dion for her time and effort to argue with me. And I do truly believe that it made for a better report. And I also want to say that I don't think that anything that was recommended by the Little Hoover Commission would be embraced by everybody. I think that's sort of the nature of CEQA. And so we did our best to listen to everybody's concerns and come up with recommendations that we believe will indeed help the state and help the state implement CEQA moving forward. So with that, we do bring this to the full commission for your consideration of this draft report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Erner, as the vice chair of the subcommittee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Jenna, for your comments as well. So this was first of all, I think for the public to understand, I don't think we've ever had as many hearings on any topic as we had on CEQA. And in my opinion anyway, heard a full complement of testifiers, right, on all sides, right? But I think what's really important is that this CEQA it has the E word in it. It says environment. And I think that the draft report that you have before you, most importantly, protects, we believe we did nothing to affect anything negative on the environment. I think what the recommendations do, they're really focused on process, right? And on ensuring that the process has a beginning, a middle, and an end, so that all sides can know that there is going to be a final decision made on whatever the project is, hopefully within a period of time that doesn't affect whether or not the project can go forward or that it needs to be stopped because it's not a good project. And also, most importantly, we also heard about the diversity of our state and the fact that there are economic decisions being made with these projects, and that the community that is involved in that, surrounding that project, needs to be able to have real access to that process. That's why you heard the fact that there is looking at the translation services, for example, to be sure that when people see these lengthy documents that they could actually read them and understand them. It was really an interesting, the hearing process I found to be very interesting, even from the beginning. I remember commenting to my colleagues here regarding the testimony was just terrific testimony, but it collided with each other all the time, right? I remember sitting up here at the very first hearing and turning, I think, to Commissioner Byer and saying, to Commissioner Emerson at the time, saying, this is interesting, because I remember sitting there and listening and saying, yes, this absolutely makes common sense to me. I get it. And then the next testifier would come up and say something completely different. And I would turn to Commissioner Emerson and say, and this one makes absolute sense also, right? And they were they were completely different testimonies with very different perspectives on the same issue. And so I think I'd like to think that we have captured what we think are proposals that we think will improve the process. We had no intention, and there is no intention ever to take CEQA down. That's not what this was about. It really was, I think, looking at procedural issues that we think could help the public understand, and also recognize something that I remember being said, that recognizing also the decision makers at the local level, meaning the elected officials who have to make the decisions every day in regards to proposals that are in front of them in regards to development, and that we needed to show some respect to them, because they're the ones really that are on, it's their responsibility. They're the ones on the hook right? And eventually, in other words, they have to get, if they're interested in getting reelected, they have to get reelected. It's wonderful to be on a commission like this because that's not our worry, right? We are not up for reelection. And so it gives us some freedom, I hope, to be able to make some responsible recommendations, maybe that might not be popular in every part of the state or with every constituency that we heard from. But there are best proposals that we've come up with to say, we think that these are things that could improve the CEQA process for local decision makers who have to go through this on a daily basis. So thank you.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Garcetti, going to punch that green button? All right,
Yes,
Garcetti
thank
followed
you.
by Commissioner Byer.
I just want to let everyone know who's listening or watching this, the complexity of this particular subject matter is so great. This was a new project for me, a new subject matter for me. And I took the deep dive necessary to understand, I hope, a good part of it. But it was and is not only a very complex subject, obviously, but there are divisions of opinion that are very deep and honestly ingrained with this. And I think what I want to do is thank both of the commissioners who were on this and the staff, because when I read this, I said, this is going to really, excuse me, piss off a lot of people. But on the other hand, it was so well done. There was an objectivity to it. They brought a complex subject that I think lay people can understand much easier. And I want to compliment everyone. And I'm proud to be a member of this commission when you see this kind of work product. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Byer.
Thank you. Unlike previous reports, I actually wrote down what I wanted to say, so I apologize for reading. The dilemma that we faced as a commission was the conflicting social goals of protecting the environment and assuring access to justice for people who want to protect the environment for themselves, their community, and for the planet, and those who have equally fervent views to solving other social problems that government has a role in, including housing, transportation, and mitigation of climate change. So the conflict between those two separate sets of goals is inevitably going to produce a degree of complexity. And I think the report does a very good job in pointing out the very large number of laws that have exempted or altered CEQA with respect to the application of CEQA and a particular other social goal. So I don't think there's any question that CEQA has problems and that the problems need to be addressed. Second, no one is proposing fundamental material changes to the substance of CEQA with respect to the preparation of materials that are going to go before public comment at the local level. Largely, we're looking at the effect in the litigation process and the consequences of that litigation to in my view, over-complexify the earlier process. So it's not a question of what gets submitted for review, it's a question of the litigation process. The litigation process itself is one where parties need to have a bona fide economic interest. That's not a radical statement. It is in federal court, it's called case or controversy, it's part of the Constitution. In federal law, the National Environmental Protection Act, and it's, as Ethan pointed out, the parallel law in New York requires standing. This is not an impossible standard to meet. So I have less patience for people who claim that change is going to materially affect people's access to justice. So I strongly support that recommendation. I also support the other recommendations especially the infill housing one. But personally, I would go further and add 2 more reforms. One, instead of studying the question of specialized courts, my personal view is that the merits of a specialized court outweigh any negatives. I understand the judicial branch in the state may be reluctant to adopt that, but I think the legislature should pass that. And let me explain why. There are many, many complicated bits of litigation in the United States. Patent law is one, and I'll use that because I spent 10 years of my life writing statutes about that. And the Congress enacted the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. They've been able to develop expertise that permits them to rapidly deal with highly technical, complex questions. I think California could benefit from that. Keep in mind, I'm not proposing that at the trial court level, but rather at the appellate level, so that you can develop expertise and avoid forum shopping. And so I think the merits of a specialized court are strong, and I think it would bring a degree of certainty or a lack of ambiguity around CEQA that would be beneficial. The second recommendation I would make is to recommend to the legislature that they approve additional resources for the Attorney General's office, so the Attorney General can more actively participate in major outcome determinative conflicts between CEQA and other state priorities such as housing, climate mitigation, or transportation infrastructure. I think it is unfortunate that we end up using CEQA as a surrogate for the lack of clarity at either the executive branch level or in the legislature, and that courts are not a good forum for adjudicating public policy issues. They're better at adjudicating facts against a law. And in this case, having the Attorney General participate in cases can give clarity to judges who are looking for some view from the executive branch. So let me close. If I can get my computer to open again. Strong environmental laws for California are an essential component to protecting our air, water, and way of life. Access to justice is a vital precondition to those permitting all Californians to secure those protections. But as with many things, those processes have become overly complex, Byzantine, uncertain, and too often prevent or delay completion of housing, core infrastructure, or projects necessary to mitigate climate change. Reforming CEQA should be a priority for all of government, executive, legislative, and judicial. These reforms can and should be modest, bipartisan, and can be effective if we focus on the desired social outcomes and less on the fetishes of procedural purity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other remarks with respect to the draft report? Seeing none, let's, just in terms of discussion, Commissioner Byer has identified 2 additional areas that he would support as recommendations. It probably is appropriate to take a look at the commissioners to see whether or not those are areas that they want to incorporate. You?
They are not areas that I want to incorporate at this time. I have the utmost respect for all of our commission members, but I think at this time, it's in our best interest to stick with what we've written. And we do have a very interesting list and profound list of things that we say need additional study. I can tell Commissioner Byer from a personal experience that the Attorney General's office is very active in this area. So as to one of your recommendations, I know that they pay very close attention and do get involved in many of the big cases. So to that recommendation, I don't know that we even need to make it. The AG is quite active in this area. As for the courts, I think that you make very good points, but let's start with education. And then we can go to the next step. Again, I appreciate this, and I don't think our 6 recommendations are a step. I don't think that people discussing CEQA and CEQA modernization will end with our report. So I take those under advisement, but I believe at this point, I would not be supportive of adding additional recommendations to our report. Thank you.
Commissioner Erner.
So first of all, Commissioner Byer, I appreciate the recommendations and the one regarding the Attorney General, I don't remember us really discussing and hearing testimony on it. I just don't recollect that. All right. In regards to this, a court specific to CEQA, I'm interested, but because we've also received some letters from people, and we heard testimony from people just now who would like us to put off our decision today, which I don't support because I want to move it today. I'm sure that once the report is public, my presumption is that we're going to hear back from many of the very people that testified in front of us for those 5 hearings. And then I think maybe what we want to do is have a conversation at some point as to whether or not there's a necessity for further reports or whatever once we get those kinds of comments. Okay. I don't know what our timing is, right, in regards to all of this, right, because we have lots of other reports that we are involved in with this, at this point. But I just think let's get. I'm really interested to see what the response is from the public as well as the legislature and the governor once our report is finalized. So I'd like to move it to have that happen today.
Any other commissioners? Hearing none. I agree with some of the comments that were made. And I do appreciate the subcommittee's work with this. The only, and I'm going to support it, but the only area that I have questions about that I'd feel better is with a further definition of infill housing. But that's not enough. My questions about defining infill housing don't lead me to fail to agree with the report. I think the report represents, as Commissioner Sidley and Erner have stated, a lengthy commission process, a lengthy commission evaluation of testimony and evidence, and a deep effort by staff to ensure that we had a variety of stakeholders who were given the opportunity to present to us their respective positions as it relates to CEQA. And this commission has always demonstrated its respect for the public, has listened intently, and conducted itself, I think, with great respect towards witnesses that come forward. And I think all witnesses were treated with dignity and respect, and their opinions given a lengthy and vigorous examination and discussion. And so, my thanks to the subcommittee. This was an important issue to take up. And I think insofar as our desire is to provide the legislature and the executive branch with the best of our thinking as to those areas of CEQA that could be reformed and areas of study, I think we've done that. I think we've done that in a way that we ought to be proud of. So, seeing no further comments by commissioners, is there a motion to adopt the report as submitted?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Motion and a second. If you'd be so kind as to call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may ask one thing first, may we take the motion to be inclusive of technical changes that need to be made by staff? For instance, as I noted in the documents, one of the appendices needs to be updated to reflect a recent legislative action and so forth. So as is normally the case, I assume the motion includes technical changes by
Is that
staff.
acceptable to the maker of the motion? It does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then calling the roll, Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Vice Chairman, Commissioner Aaroner, Commissioner Byer, Assemblymember Chen, Commissioner Garcetti.
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez, Commissioner Johnson, Senator Min, Assemblymember Ortega, Commissioner Sidley,
Yes.
Senator Wilk. That motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
Right. And congratulations to the subcommittee.
Well, and thank
For
you
your
very
work.
much for the staff because they were instrumental in moving this forward. And again, thank you to all the people that took time to testify, to write in letters, to call. All of that went into our deep discussion and thinking to come up with these recommendations. And also all of that went into what didn't go into the report based on the differences of opinion. So we thank you very, very much for your participation. And I think that's how we got to a report that is something that I'm proud to put out. So thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will then make those technical changes, format the report and so forth, and then release it in due course. If we can finish the agenda, I think very quickly then, Mr. Chairman, moving on to item number 5, which is page 52 of your packet, the project and meeting schedule. The dates remain the same for all meetings. I would note that we now anticipate the May 23rd meeting will be in person rather than remote. Previously, it was remote. We now plan to do that in person, to be held in Silicon Valley as the first hearing on artificial intelligence in government. So more details on that to come. That is the last item on the agenda. The implementation and impact report was inadvertently left off the agenda. I'll just note that page 58 of your packet has a list of bills the commission is supporting this year, and I expect that list to expand. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we have completed the agenda.
Thanks. Just to bring the commissioners up to speed with outreach and participation, we had a Zoom call with Assemblymember Arambula relating to, was that Bill 1883?
1888, I believe, if I'm correct.
And that had to do with labor trafficking.
Correct, yes. And we are now analyzing, there's a budget change proposal that Tamara and I have taken a look at, and we're going to be getting back to his staff on that. And that bill will be changing, I think, shortly.
Yeah.
So.
And I had an opportunity to make a presentation before the Los Angeles chapter of the League of Cities, which is their largest chapter. You got 88 cities as part of that, and they were interested in retail theft. And Los Angeles City and the county have task force, and they work together to both chase down the retail theft, but also in part try to deal with the secondary market, the fences, the folks that get that material. And it was interesting because the president of that chapter is a prosecutor for LA County who did they send us her proposed language as it relates to retail theft and shoplifting and fences? Do we have that yet?
I believe we have proposed language.
Okay, but she had been working on that because as you know, as we've come to appreciate, those folks that accept the stolen products and they operate out of warehouses and garages and all manner of places, and in some instances sell it back to the people they stole it from. So I'm glad I had an opportunity to do that. And so with that, I think we can conclude our meeting. Thank you all very much, commissioners. Look forward to seeing you again. It looks like our next meeting is April 25. Is that correct?
That is correct. April 25th, that will be a Zoom meeting, and that will be another hearing on homeowners insurance. So that will be by Zoom on April 25th.
Yeah, and I should indicate we have been in, staff has been in touch with Steve Poizner, and he would have been here today, but he had a prior conflict. But I hope we can see him on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.